Okay, now there are a shitload of indie titles on the PS4. Some people have actually been complaining online that there are more indie titles than AAA games are actually proper, fully priced retail games.
Yep.
And they're actually complaining about the fact that they've actually spent around 3,500. I was about to say that's like a fucking really expensive console.
Yeah.
Like, they spent £350 on a console and they don't want just indie games. They haven't spent that much money just to play indie titles. Do you guys agree with that argument?
I don't agree with it because I think you get your AAA games, you get indie games, and I think at the end of the day the choice is yours. Nobody's putting a gun to your head and saying you have to buy indie games. I mean, look at some of the best games that came out on the PS3, Journey, The Walking Dead, all of these games. Yeah, Stardust. All of these games are indie games. They weren't huge games, and I think why you're seeing a huge departure from Sony's AAA studios. This is one of the reasons as well, because there's less pressure in indie games because obviously you're selling for a lower price point. The games aren't big mega budget games that if they don't work in the market, the whole studio just shuts down. So I think it's a bit unfair for people to just sort of want AAA games coming all the time, because obviously both these consoles are quite new and it's going to take time. It takes 2 to 3 years for a big budget game to come out. So as long as
I think obviously when there's a bit of a drought in the AAA games market, if you will, then there's always these indie games to turn to. I think initially, if you look at the PS3, you had to wait for months before a good AAA game came out, and it didn't have anything filler in there in between for you to get your hands on it to play. So that was one thing that was severely lacking. So in this case, with the PS4, you've got a lot of these.
You've got stuff to play.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got stuff to play. Kami, how do you feel about indie games?
Well, it's not a surprise that there are a lot more indie games on the PS4. I mean, that's one of the things they said they were going to do. So, on the other side, Sony would be thinking they're not in a rush to release the AAA freaking titles because the console's selling. So when the console's selling, and they've said by March, was it 5 million?
Yeah.
And they've
6 million.
So
no, 7 million. 7 million. Before,
yeah.
Before the end of March, they actually touched 7 million.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, when you know the console's selling, why would you be in a rush?
Yeah, I mean,
even though the delayed Watch Dogs is still selling.
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes back to the same argument. Do you want a half-baked game or do you want good games? And then obviously you've got games to play in the middle as well. So, if you've got AAA games that are worth playing and then you've got indie games that are worth playing, then what's the problem?
And you've also got they want to wait for the audience to grow even further before they release it. So
they can sell more units.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got you've got your games that came out on launch. They might have sold even more if they if they released them now. But obviously, you still need games to sell on launch. So this was one thing that sometimes these companies have to sacrifice, or they have to make a deal with Sony so they can sell their boxes. But I think Infamous, maybe if it released at launch, wouldn't have sold as much as it has right now. So the more your audience grows, the better chances you have of selling your game.
More about that.